As the ceasefire in Gaza enters a critical phase, the region remains trapped in uncertainty. The first stage of the agreement expired over a week ago, and both sides are locked in a tense standoff. While Hamas pushes for a full transition to the second phase, Israel, which has blocked all the humanitarian aid to Gaza, insists on extending the first phase. A faint glimmer of hope is emerging as a new round of negotiations begins today. Will these negotiations succeed, or will Israeli occupation forces escalate the conflict? How will the ongoing international mediation affect the path forward for Gaza? Welcome to In Depth. Al-Ahram Online has reported that Israel has cut off Gaza's electricity supply and halted all the humanitarian aid to the territory ahead of new ceasefire talks. The decision aims to force Hamas into releasing the remaining detainees as Israel seeks to extend the first phase of the ceasefire. The move has exacerbated Gaza's already dire humanitarian crisis, with the UN and humanitarian rights groups condemning Israel for using these tactics to further its political objectives. Meanwhile, Hamas continues to call for the resumption of aid and the initiation of the second phase of the ceasefire, which would involve a full Israeli withdrawal from Gaza. Three Palestinians were killed by Israeli occupation forces in southern Gaza as Israel continues its blockade. The humanitarian situation worsens. While ceasefire talks stall, diplomatic efforts remain ongoing to resume negotiations, but fears of renewed violence grow.
Israeli violence continues in Gaza amid stalled ceasefire talks. Three Palestinians were killed this past weekend in southern Gaza by Israeli occupation forces who breached the ceasefire agreement. Israeli tanks also fired near Rafah crossing, intensifying fears of renewed hostilities. Meanwhile, Israel continues to maintain a full blockade on Gaza, closing the Karam Abu Salim crossing for a ninth consecutive day, exacerbating the already dire humanitarian crisis. This blockade prevents essential aid from reaching Gaza civilians. However, Hamas has rejected Israel's demand to extend the first phase ceasefire, insisting that the second phase of the ceasefire be implemented immediately. This phase includes the release of all detainees and a full withdrawal of Israeli occupation forces from Gaza. While diplomatic efforts continues to push for negotiations, the future of Gaza remains uncertain, with fears of escalating violence mounting.
And for more analysis, we're joined from Ramallah by Mr. Yasser Manna, researcher in Israeli affairs, and from occupied Jerusalem, Dr. Abdel Nasser Mekki, political science professor. Welcome to In Depth, and I would start with Dr. Mekki. Now, sir, how do you interpret Israel's refusal to move into the second phase of the ceasefire, and what does this indicate about their overall strategy in Gaza?
I think the Israeli when they are using this strategy, they want to pressure on Hamas in order to accept, their conditions, and also they don't want to go to the second stage, because in the second stage, as everybody knows, that the Minister of Finance, Mr. Smotrich, who is one of the extreme, that's ministry in the Netanyahu government, treated in 19 of the last 2 months that when they conduct the agreement that he will withdraw from the government if Netanyahu go to the second stage. And that means Netanyahu, his government will be collapsed. And after that, Netanyahu, maybe he will go to the jail. So because of this is one thing. The other thing is that Netanyahu try to, that's pressure on Hamas in order to release all the detainees on the first stage from the agreement, in order not to go to the second stage. And he didn't want to make any that's renovation or for Gaza to build again, because as he used the concepts of Trump to displacement of Gaza, and he used this concepts in order that he will push on the people or citizens in Gaza to leave Gaza. Because of this, I think this is why Netanyahu and the other is not going to the second stage and insisting to finish all things in the first stage.
Mr. Manna, an Israeli delegation is reportedly going to Qatar today to advance talks regarding Gaza ceasefire. Now, according to a statement by the Israeli Prime Minister office, what are your expectations in this regard?
Welcome to you, to the viewers and the honorable guest. Undoubtedly, Israel is trying to get out of the second phase because the second phase will mean political losses for Israel, as Israel in the second phase, as agreed upon, will withdraw from Gaza Strip completely and will announce the end of the genocide war that started after October 7th. But in general, Israel is not ready to do that simply because the governance of Gaza and the day after the war is not yet approved to follow a vision that goes hand in hand with the United States of America. So Israel is not ready to settle that down, but as a result of US pressures practiced on Israel to go forward with a second or third phase, this Israeli delegation going to Doha is going for negotiations in the framework to extend the first phase. This is what Israel wants, to extend the first phase further, and consequently they will again of the first phase to release all the detainees from the Gaza Strip and avoiding the start of the second phase. Israel might impose impossible conditions to prolong the negotiations, and there is another scenario that is also potential to impose some impossible conditions, such as rolling out Palestinian leadership and disarming the resistance, and then this will be the end of the negotiations, and Israel will initiate the thought to the United States that the hindrance of these negotiations came from the Palestinian side and not from Israel, as Israel initiated and sent a delegation to negotiate in Doha and to go forward with the second phase, but the Palestinian side is the one who opposed the negotiation.
Okay. Dr. Miki, Israel's decision to cut off Gaza's electricity supply, alongside, of course, halting humanitarian aid by blocking crossings, adds to the long list of Israel's war crimes. How does this decision exacerbate an already dire humanitarian crisis in Gaza?
Yes, I think this is one of the crimes war, which is to cut all the humanitarian aids to Gaza. As you know, this is the 9th day that the Israeli is closing the crossing borders and not allowed to the aids and medical and also to the water to enter Gaza. And this is one of the humanitarian things that they needed in Gaza, because as you know now we are in Ramadan, the 10th day of Ramadan. The Israeli government, which is as a crimes government, using these tools in order to pressure on Hamas, in order to release the detainees and also to accept their condition, the Israeli condition. And what they use, cut the electricity. This electricity is using there in order to for the sewage system, also in desalination line for the water desalination, and also for feeding the some bakeries there. Now about 5 bakeries in they have stopped, and also now the miserable conditions started in Gaza. All the prices for the that product have been increased many times, maybe 5 or 6 times, and the people now they are suffering from the high price of the product, and also in this the miserable condition, which is about the water, the lack of the water, and also the electricity which was used for even for the hospitals and for using for the medical and the surgery. So I think this thing will influence on the life of the people. But I think this is influence on the reactions of Hamas about accepting the Israeli, that solution.
Mr. Mana, how do you assess Israel's decision to extend the blockade and prevent humanitarian aid from entering Gaza, and what are the political implications of this move?
At first, the Gaza Strip has suffered from the blockade for 15 years, and it worsened during this genocide war, which means that this crime to be added to the Israeli crime is a constant crime that has been taking place for 15 years. And in my opinion, Israel is fully aware that the Palestinians and the Gaza population is a pressure card to be practiced on the Palestinian resistance, and so these humanitarian and environmental and pollution disasters being practiced in Gaza, in addition to the lack of water and electricity, the Palestinians to accept the impossible negotiating conditions or to accept a new agreement. But I think the Palestinian side is now indicating that this blockade and these pressures will not change the conditions of the Palestinian resistance regarding ending the war. And I think that this might take longer than expected. They are practicing all of pressure possible, but we are going to see the Palestinian side compromise, especially with the pressures practiced by the mediators and the United States. We might see a second phase, but it might take longer than expected.
Dr. Miki, what role do you think the international community and Arab mediators like Egypt should play in ensuring the success of the second phase of the negotiations?
I think the international community, especially as France, Italy, United Kingdom, and also Germany, they met and also they condemned what the Israelis is doing now in Gaza for the siege and also closing all the borders in order to prevent all the assistance aids to enter Gaza, especially the water and for the electricity cutting in Gaza. They condemned this, and also they condemned the escalation of the violation by the Israeli. As you know, they killed 5 people, Palestinian 5 people there, and also 37 have been injured.
Yes.
So this is the international community could also push on the Israeli government in order to stop all these action, and also with the United States of America, they could also make that agreement to push to pressure on Israel to stop and to go into the second stage. And also in the same time, they should be complete commitment to the American initiative now. As you know, now the American today they will go to Qatar in order to Mr. Wotkov to discuss the matter of extension of the first stage or going to the second stage. For the mediators like Egypt and Qatar, yes, they could play an important and vital role here, because as you know, they are from the beginning, they are there, and also they could pressure on Israeli for many tools. And with the United States of America, this will be something that could stop Israeli in order to go continuation of the genocide for cutting the water, the electricity, which will influence on the water supply for Gaza and also for the life of the people, which now change to that when they allow to open the crossing. As you know, the AIDS trucks have been, entered Gaza, and there are something was good for the people of Gaza, especially when all these trucks entered Gaza, and many of the foods and the water and the tents entered Gaza. So yes, I think they could have the ability and capability in order to pressure on government extreme, especially by the international community and also by the meditators, especially by Egypt also.
Mr. Now Israel pushing for a ceasefire extension instead of moving to the second phase. Do you believe that this is part of a deliberate strategy to avoid military and humanitarian obligations?
Yes, in my opinion, this is an attempt to get out of the second phase of the agreement, because there is a trend in Israel that sees that it's necessary to go with the second phase and the return of the first phase, and to return the first phase. And in case of returning all the detainees, he will have the only pressuring card that the Palestinian resistance has, and therefore threatening with the war and launching more military operations in Gaza will be possible for Israel, and this will be a guarantee for Israel to target Gaza to carry out limited military operation in case of a second phase. And this was evident in way too many statements statements issued by the Israeli officials, but by the mediators, pressures, Israel might to agree to a second phase, but we must also talk about that Israel does not want to go to the war as it happened before, as we have seen since 7th of October and what followed. Israel does not want that again, and that's why the term used in the Israeli media currently by analysts is going back to the fall, which means assassination and small military operations, and this is what Israel wants, and this is the equation Israel wants to continue.
Dr. Mickey, with U.S. President Donald Trump's current stance, how likely is it that the United States will pressure Israel to maintain the ceasefire and avoid the war reigniting?
I think I want to clarify something. First of all, as you know, Hamas have been suggesting something new after they met with the American. This is the first time that the American administration, they met with Hamas, which was accused them that they are terrorists. So this is a good step for going to have a new
dimension in the whole equation.
Yeah. Yes, this is something for the also for discussion, much more for a new suggestion by the and also they are open-minded for these things. So Mr. Bullard that met some of the members, and Hamas after that they suggested to there are some news to have long term for ceasefire from 5 to 10 years, and there are some conditions in this 5 to 10 years by Hamas that maybe they're going to be like this arm or political, that's party, something that will be good for the people of Gaza. This is something. The other thing is, that's when they have their plan, and after that the Arab Summit, and after that the LG, they approved the Egyptian, that's a plan for a reconstruction in Gaza with the existing of the people of Gaza. So I think this will encourage that the American administration to go ahead with long and also fruitful in Qatar. And as I said before, Mr. Witkoff will go to Qatar to continue the discussion. And after that, I think that the American administration now, they will not Israeli to go to, that's even to make aggression against against. I think the American administration want to reach to ceasefire, and also in the last, I think finally the American want to supporting the Egyptian plan, and also supporting the committee support, which is that the supporting committee in Gaza. And at the end, I think there will be like a Palestinian team to Gaza, and according to the Egyptian, there will be 15 members, which will be technocrat, will be, that's in Gaza for preparing for the Egyptian plan, which was 3 stages, and also for reconstruction. This is
in the reality in the Gaza Strip so far, contradicting with the Israeli that they do not want to fully withdraw from the Gaza Strip because Hamas still governing Gaza, and ending the war completely will be a victory to the Palestinians, which is not desired by the United States and Israel, in my opinion. That there are also discussions behind closed doors, and we can see this in some statements about who is going to govern Gaza. There was the plan proposed by the head of the Israeli opposition about Egypt governing Gaza, which was met with rejection, which means that there are attempts inside Israel to rule out Hamas from the scene in the Gaza governance issue. But we have now a very unwavering Arab stance that will be recorded in the Egyptian history and the Arab history, insisting on a end of the war. But when we reach a clear vision that finds the consensus of all parties about the Gaza reconstruction and the Gaza governance, ready to withdraw from Gaza, because the remaining Strip is for Israel is costly, financially and also military wise.
Well, I'd like to thank you very much. That was Mr. Yasser Manna, researcher in Israeli affairs, and Professor Abdel Nasser Mekki, political science professor. Thank you both for your valuable insights. And ladies and gentlemen, this brings us to the end of today's episode of In Depth. I'm Hela Al-Hamalawi. Thank you very much for joining us today, and stay tuned for more updates here on Q News.